Good evening, Dr. Biskin and the class. So today I'm gonna discuss a paper called Polarizing Tweets on Climate Change, and it is published by Tyagi et al. And published in Springer in October 2020. And I'm Imrul Shuva presenting this paper. So why I have selected this paper? This is actually a paper shared by Professor Dr. Biskin. So I have gone through a few papers and I found this one is interesting. So this paper is, actually taken a case study on climate change and then analyzed some Twitter data to find the similarity and dissimilarity between groups, who believes in the climate change and the threat from the climate change for the future generation, and some people who are disbelievers, they don't believe climate change as a result of human errors or human activities. So they kind of try to reject the climate change and the issues of that. So this paper actually analyze those people and their grouping trends in Twitter and leads some interesting findings from there. So the table of contents I have selected for this paper is to discuss the introduction, and then I will go through the data collection and methodology part, and then I will show some results they have found from this paper, and I will discuss what they have found, and then we will conclude this paper. So to introduce, social media is actually a very, is an important part of life these days, and many people use social media, and Twitter is one of the best players among those social media platforms. And they have analyzed the Twitter data in a time when actually United Nations Climate Change Conference 2018 was there, and based on the conference, many people shared their feedbacks, and so this paper has classified those people as believers and disbelievers based on their hashtags they have used. And this paper also try to find out the interaction between the groups and interaction within the groups as well, and they have found also some bot-like accounts and their activities throughout their research. So how they have collected the data? So they have collected the data from tweeting, retweeting, replying, and mentioning, those four kind of data, and they actually categorized those data in one single kind, that is all communication. And it was during the time I already mentioned that it was in United Nations Climate Change Conference 2018 held in Poland. And they have also a search on internet with the keyword COP24, which refers to this specific conference. And they have gone through some articles, regarding this COP24 conference. And their total tweets and retweets data they have analyzed, were around more than 1 million data they have analyzed, and to reach their conclusion from this paper. So what the methodologies they have used? Firstly, they have identified the hashtags. So they have identified the hashtags based on the previous papers. So the previous papers already concluded that, some of the reference papers, they have told that the climate hoax and climate change is real. So this kind of hashtags were used. Most of the people, they talked about climate change. And this paper found that, so the climate hoax, this keyword was used by most of the disbelievers who don't, believe the impact of climate change to this world. And who are the believers? They used mostly the climate change is real, this kind of the data. Then the researchers gone through 1,000 and 1,000, total 2,000 hashtags. And then they have checked that the 96% of those 1,000 people, they were actually, disbeliever who have used the hashtag climate hoax, and the 99% who have used the hashtag climate change is real were believer. So they have labeled those hashtags, they have labeled those categories like disbelievers and believers by -1, and the believers as +1, and they have tried to categorize those. So who have labeled -1s are disbeliever, then 1 are believers, and who they have found that as 0 or near 0 the data, so they have classified those as unclassified. So what they have used to find based on the label, so they have used a label propagation algorithm, which I haven't mentioned here. You can go through by internet search, but what they have found after using this algorithm, I'm going to discuss this in a little bit. So they have looked into aggregate polarized hashtags into entire data set, and they have found so around 805,000 around 8,500 tweets from around 2,000 disbelievers, and they have also found 1,200 tweets from around 15,000 and half believers. So 100 users were randomly sampled then, in which 91% of the disbelievers supports the activity of a disbeliever, and then they have also found that 96% believers showing activity towards the believers, so they have selected the believer accounts to retweet them. And then the way they have found it, the bot accounts, so they have used a software called Bot Hunter, which is a software in Carnegie Mellon University, where the researchers are from. So they have used a probability threshold as 0.5. So they have classified those bot accounts who has threshold 0.5 or above. So they have found that so 596,000 bot-like tweets they have found among total within the total data set, which was more than 1 million tweets. So they have also tried to find the account types and from where those accounts used the information. And for finding these account types, they have used a long short-term memory neural network, which is actually similar to state-of-the-art model, which is elaborated in some other reference research papers. So what they have found that from this news agencies, 2.2% tweets are from disbelievers, and 6.2% tweets are from those believers account who have used different kind of news sources to their hashtags and Twitter to their tweets. So what are the results found from this? So to show the results, they have used actually 3 scales in which they have described the results. So what is the first one was topic of discussion within believers and disbelievers, and then the second was is the group interaction between between those groups of believers and disbelievers, and within their same groups of disbelievers or the same groups of believers. So they have also tried to find the news agencies and contrast bot-like accounts behaviors from this, which I'm going to go through in the later part. So most frequent words used by 2 groups. So the researchers have found that the believers mostly used the words like change, world, need, action, and future. So from which they have gone through a conclusion that calling this believers group actually were calling for an action to combat the climate change to build a safe world for the future generation. And the disbelievers, mostly they have used the words like private, which they refer to private jet, and then Sanders, then end, warming, this kind of keywords. So they have mostly used those to indicate attacks on pro-climate change personalities and their messages shared on the Twitter data. So to analyze the user accounts and their conversations and communications between the groups, they have plotted a scattered plot within the retweet network, mention network, reciprocal network, and reply network. And they have mostly found that so the groups, they were communicating in between them rather than communicating with the other group. Like here, the green and red are showing the believers and disbelievers respectively. So we can clearly see that in the believers mostly communicating with the believer groups, and the disbelievers, they were communicating with their own groups. So after analyzing the word cloud of popular news sources, what they have found that the disbelievers, they were actually collecting the news from very specific sources. Like you can see that the Patriots news is dominating this group. So mostly they have collected the data from this kind of news sources. And the believers, they actually didn't depend on a specific news source. Rather, they have used many different kind of news sources in their Twitters, so to describe the problems caused by climate change. So now to analyze the bot activity in different probability threshold, they have shown the probability threshold in the x-axis and how the users were using those data. So they have shown the believers accounts, the disbelievers accounts, and also bot-like believer and disbeliever accounts. So they have not found that the bot-like accounts are actually similarly active within both groups, like disbeliever and believer groups. So they couldn't contrast on that because they were kind of like acting similarly. So to discuss the whole paper, what I have discussed, so again, they have gone through the most critical case study at this moment, which is climate change. And they have found that the different groups use different hashtags, like climate change. As we have already seen, that climate change was used by the believers, and the other hashtag was used by the disbeliever groups. Then they have also got to conclude that the disbelievers, they more on focused on attacking personalities. Those are believing in anthropogenic origin of climate change, which means actually the human created problems to climate change. And then rather than the believers were not doing this, the believers were mostly focused on fighting the climate change to fix the future of human in the next generation. So they have also found that there is a homophily in retweet. What does that mean? For example, so the people are retweeting, they have similar kind of interest within the group. So the believers were retweeting the believers post, and then the disbelievers were retweeting the disbelievers post. They have also found that the groups were communicating only in between them rather than communicating with the other groups. And they have found one most interesting conclusion, that the disbelievers, they only depends on few specific news sources, which might lead them to falsified newses. So we can question their credibility of the news sources, because they were only depending on some specific news, so they might be fake. But the believers, they were collecting news from everywhere, which we can tell that so their news sources should be more credible compared to the disbelievers. So to conclude, I think I am with the believers, because the scientists found the long-term effect of climate change and how destructive that can be for the human in our future. So I would say that we all should fight climate change and make a safe future for the next generation. So thank you everyone for watching my presentation. So the reference I have used, this is Tagi et al. And the name of this was a conference paper named Polarizing Tweets on Climate Change. And it was, published in Springer in 2020, October. Thank you.